Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week we get interesting people from different parts of the world to talk to us about innovation, entrepreneurship, and education, and especially how those things can relate to service to communities. This week we have with us a friend of mine. I actually do have friends. Some of the members of the club might be like, kind of surprised about that, but all good. And this particular friend, who may or may not admit to being one of my friends, is a guy named Mike Lawrence. He is the CEO of Q.org. And those of you in the club who are members of the ed tech community already know Mr. Lawrence and all of the good that he is doing with the Q community and the conferences that Q puts on. And we are excited to talk to him about these as possibilities. So, with that, I would like to hand it over to he whom I will call a friend, Mike Lawrence. Mike, it's all yours.
Well, I appreciate the introduction. Thank you so much, Rushton. Glad to call you a friend, and happy to be invited to participate in this auspicious group. I just like the fact that you coined a term. You referred to it as the Rotaryverse. Is that what you call this? Oh, you're muted yourself. So
No. That works just fine. We can be any particular verse that is necessary.
okay, great. I love to speak to Rotarians, and I look forward to hearing any feedback that you all may have. But yes, as Rushton shared, I have the honor of serving as CEO of my favorite nonprofit, which is Q. At one point in time, we were known as Computer Using Educators, but as I often say, we pulled what I call a KFC and just went with the acronym instead. Because how often do you hear them talking about Kentucky or fried in the context of chicken anymore? So we feel that Q really had grown beyond limiting ourselves to simply computers, and we use all sorts of technology. And we felt that the acronym Q had become in itself a known brand and phrase, and it has technology implications. You know, cue the lights, cue the music. In our case, cue the learning and cue the future. So we felt it was a good way to keep a known brand and move forward as an organization. And we rolled out a new logo. And so, yes, I'm thrilled to serve in this capacity and work hard on the mission. I prepared a few slides, and I'll jump into these as they pop up, and feel free to jump in if you've got questions. And I can try to respond, but we'll save most of the questions, I think, till the very end here. So thank you for the opportunity. So just as a quick intro, I've got a slide here. That's me, and not Ricky Gervais. I actually have a version of this presentation where Ricky Gervais's picture slides in on top of mine, but given the time frame, I took that out. What we thought we'd talk about is the care and feeding of passion-based communities. This really works true to be of Q, as well as many other nonprofit organizations and organizations in general, that to have an active passion-based community, you need to support them. So in the case of Q, our mission is very clear. We inspire innovative learners. And we do that by fostering community, personalizing learning, infusing technology, developing leadership, and advocating educational opportunities for all. That is our mission, and our vision is a community inspiring innovative learners. And so this is what we seek to do. The way we accomplish this is by engaging learners of all ages, but mostly those that are educators, so teachers, administrators, professors in universities, and making sure that they have the tools and resources to effectively utilize technology to prepare the next generation for citizenry and being amazing citizens and growing up and inventing new things, making sure that they're utilizing technology effectively. Our organization spans California and Nevada and has several chapters, which we call affiliates. We give them the right to use our logo and represent and produce events, and so you can see in this slide that all 21 of them are here. The largest of which, of course, is Q Nevada, or what they like to call Q Envy, which I think is a clever name. And the newest is North State Q, which encompasses many of the counties north of the capital and all the way out to the coast, and some of what we call Baja Oregon, lovingly. The rest of those, of course, you can see and look. I actually live down here in Orange County Q, and we're despite the size of the affiliate, we're actually the second largest of Q's affiliates. We have close to 9,000 members across the 2 states. We produce 2 large conference events every year, one in Palm Springs and one in Napa Valley. It's actually at a high school where we gather with about 1,200 or 1,300 educators there. And then down in Palm Springs in March, we just finished our conference, and that ended up being nearly 7,000 attendees. We were just about 17 shy of hitting 7,000 attendees, which was a record for us. And so through these 21 affiliates, we also, as I mentioned, they produce individual events, mostly on Saturdays, sometimes what they call coffee breaks after school. And it's a way to nurture our community from a distance as Mother Q, as we call ourselves, and as our local Q affiliates. We also have 7 learning networks, we call them. They used to be called special interest groups, but when we rolled out the new branding, we decided to call them learning networks because it really is what they are. They are job-alikes or interest-based groupings. So we have one that's all the librarians within Q. We have another one that is for administrators, one that's for CTOs and tech leaders and TOSAs. And we have others that are based on independent schools and online and blended learning. So all of the wonderful different pieces within educational technology, we try to find a place for them, whether it be a geographic place where they can meet regularly through these coffee breaks or these Q meetups, or by topic or job, and those are through the learning networks. And so that's one of the ways that we make sure that we're feeding our community, that we give them that face-to-face local support from people that know that your district is going through this issue or that issue, or they know, friends and colleagues within your school or district, and they can commiserate and they can offer great suggestions because they're local. And then at the top level, we have our conferences and our professional development that we do to support everybody. We also advocate in Sacramento and in DC, and we make sure that policy and bills and other items are put forward that are supportive of using technology in schools, that we have training and resources and equipment available for the educators that are in front of those students. But beyond all of that, we have some other things that we seek to do with our work. And I can get my screen share to pop back up again. Here we go. Key among those is we try to have fun. We try to make sure that we aren't district PD. We aren't the training that you have to sit and get and you must attend. We're fun. We try to do these coffee breaks or what we call coffee queues, or some other folks will meet and have different beverages and call it brew queues or Q Bernet. They're very creative in their naming approaches, but we're fun. We try to infuse a lot of love of learning into our work. And make sure that educators are given the opportunity to rejoice at the honor that we have to serve the community by educating students. And when you're a nonprofit and when you're a passion-based community, you have that flexibility to make sure that it's goofy and fun and not staid and tired, and we can really stretch out and do that. Now, that's not to say that professional development at the school district or the school site aren't themselves fun. I'm sure there's great opportunities out there, and I was involved in many school districts and saw great trainings, but I've seen bad trainings as well. And so it's one of the things we strive for, is to make sure that our educational offerings for our members are engaging and fun. We even offer ice cream at the end of the day at one of our programs called Rockstar Teacher, and try to engage it. And another thing that we embrace is this philosophy. It's a Native American proverb that I first came across when I was in my teacher credential program. And it really encapsulates what my personal philosophy about learning is that when you're a student sitting in a class and your teacher is bored by what they're covering or not engaged in their own teaching, then you're not going to be engaged as a learner. You're not going to be as interested in what they have to say. And so what we seek to do is make sure that our members are always learning, that they are themselves lifelong learners, and they embrace this concept of learning as they teach. I certainly tried to. I was a high school English teacher before I got into administration and then later with Q, and I constantly sought out new research, new literature, new ways of teaching literature that I had taught many, many years, and wanted to find ways to make it engaging and fun and interesting. I would have students, when I taught of Mice and Men, for instance, we would actually put George Milton, the main character in the story, on trial for what he does at the end of the book. No, I don't want to, spoiler alert, I don't want to blow that for you if you haven't read of Mice and Men, but we actually put him on trial, and we have kids take different roles. You're going to be the judge, you will be the defense attorney, you will be the prosecution, you will be George Milton, the defendant, and engage the kids that way. And that came from something I learned by going to a workshop and seeing different ways of presenting information. Another thing that we are strongly believers in and we build into our training is the yes and philosophy, which you draw from the world of improv and acting. We found that this yes and philosophy, the idea that when you are teaching, you are in many cases a performer. And if you can embrace this concept of yes and, you can discover wonderful, happy accidents in the classroom that turn into new learning opportunities. And so we embrace this yes and philosophy as ourselves when we're offering training for educators, and try to find ways to engage the attendees and make it a yes and experience. And for that reason, we don't have that much canned curriculum, if you will, for our professional development. We send out fantastic, we call them lead learners, to run these trainings and speak at conferences that are going to embrace that lead learner philosophy as well as the yes and improv style philosophy. And so that's something that we do to really engage our community. Other things that I kicked out the question of this topic to the Twitter community and asked them to respond with their own thinking about what they look for in a community, a passion-based community, to gain their trust and to support them. And it was about communication. You have to be timely in your communication. You have to be transparent in your communication. If you screw up and you make a mistake, you got to be open about it. You got to tell people that. We had a conference 2 years ago where the internet and the Wi-Fi at the conference just didn't work up to our standards. And we tried to be as swift and accommodating as possible. We acknowledged the flaw. I got up on stage in front of the conference attendees and let them know that we were working on it, and some of the things that we were attempting, and what they could do to potentially help to make sure that it wasn't worse and, in fact, could get better. And we apologized for it. And then the next year, we stepped it up, and we invested, and we made sure that that particular problem wasn't an issue the next year's conference, and ever since then. So you've got to be transparent, you've got to communicate early and often, and you've got to develop that trust that they're seeking in that passion-based community. The other thing that we do is we try to recognize our members as much as possible. We do this many ways. We have, as a nonprofit, we are member-run, so there are members that vote for the board of directors, and so we have 9 board of directors, and those are members themselves. They're voted in by the members. And we have 7 or 8 committees. I think it's 8 committees now, and we have those learning networks and those affiliates that I mentioned. So there are many opportunities for members to be recognized as leaders within their community. In education, this is particularly valuable because you have people that will teach for 20, 30-odd years, 40 years in some cases, before retiring, and they want to stay in the classroom, and they're doing great work in the classroom, and we want them to stay in the classroom. But there's this is an opportunity for them to take on challenges without having to leave the classroom. In many careers, you move up a ladder. There's no real ladder in education for you to move up. If you're a teacher, you're a teacher. You could decide to go into administration, but the trade-off is you have to leave your kids behind. You don't get to teach and be an administrator. There are some rare exceptions. I know a principal who teaches one class period, one section, at the high school in the evenings, and that way he's able to continue connecting with the students. But that's the rare exception, finding examples like that. So usually to move up in education, you have to leave the classroom behind and move into administration. So volunteering at CUE allows you to have the title of, you know, board treasurer or president of an affiliate or chair of a learning network, and give you those leadership opportunities, give you those experiences to learn from, and also give you something to add to your resume. So that when you apply for a grant, let's say, to help get funding for your classroom, you now have 3 or 4 things you can add on that application that, oh, in addition to teaching my 4th grade students all day, all year round, I also am chair of this group or that group within this nonprofit organization. I'm serving a mission that's greater than myself. So that's an area that we find our members benefit from. And then we have more direct recognitions. We actually have an awards program, which is very common, I'm sure, within nonprofits, where you recognize the best among your community. And these are member nominated. And while we do allow self-nomination, I'm really proud to say that every one of our nominees at this year's conference and most of our conferences are nominated by someone else within the community. So they see someone doing great work, and they put their name in as an ideal example of someone that should be acknowledged and raised up. So the last two slides here, as I wrap up my time, I'll share with you is something that I think, just from a technology perspective, that I think will help communities really engage, and that's using social media. So here's an example. I actually pulled this from a slideshow I keynoted back in November, Jurupa Unified School District, and they had an event called Tech Fest, and they created what's called a hashtag. And you can see on the screen here, it's JUSD TechFest 15. This is a bit long, so it's not a great example. But if you create a hashtag for your events or topics that your community are passionate about, it's a great way to engage them on and offline. And I'm sure Rushton is well aware of this tool and uses it profusely. But I thought I'd share it just in case it's something that you haven't really fully engaged with. It's a great way of communicating. It's a great way of being transparent. It's a great way of being quick to respond. But you do have to have someone monitor it and support it. Otherwise, it'll look like you're just shooting, yelling out into the ether and not actually be responding. And then the last point I'll make here is to challenge. It's an interesting thing that sometimes seems counterintuitive, but when you challenge your members, when you give them something difficult to do, you will fully engage them, and it's a great way to care and feed your passion-based community. When they're passionate about something, give them a challenge. Say, look, can we find a way to fund a laptop for every child in all of California? How could we do that? How much would it cost? Where would the funding come from? How could we support that rollout and make sure that the teachers are trained and the students know how to use the tools? Give them a big, meaty challenge, and you'll find that that passion converts into loyalty and dedication to serve your mission. So don't be afraid to take on the big challenges. So those are my thoughts on the care and feeding of passion-based community. What say you, Rushton Hurley?
All right. Well, my great thoughts as always. I want to also introduce our treasurer for the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. That's Alan Thompson. And he is one who, while he works in several fields, his wife is an educator, and so I'm sure he'll have a comment soon enough. And Alan, once you demute, I'll bring you into that. Mike, I want to start kind of our question period by looking specifically at the idea of the fun in developing a community, right? So having been to Q conferences and to see how important it is to the attendees, like this for some attendees, getting to the Q conferences, one or both, that's an oasis in their professional desert. They feel like in schools they haven't connected with people like they want, and so there's that opportunity. And I think that this is such a good time for people who are involved in education or Rotary or whatever it might be to see that they can reach out and develop communities much more broadly than perhaps they had thought they could before. I'm guessing that you've had some pretty amazing stories from teachers who found the experience of being around a bunch of energized people who care about teaching in innovative ways to be something quite personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit a number of the points on why this is powerful, but I think it goes back to that need within us to find your tribe. I think back to my own experience. I was a young teacher. I was using technology just because it was around and I could. And I found out that there were 5 or 6 other teachers in the district that would get together once a month, and they called it a CHIPS meeting, and I forget what the acronym stood for, but it was CHIPS. And we would choose a different school and go visit their computer lab. This tells you how long ago I'm talking. But we would go and we would share stories. And, oh, have you seen this software program? Or have you tried this? Or have you used this technique with kids? And it was so exciting and exhilarating to find others that were challenged in the same way as you were and were excited by the same things as you were. It's your tribe. And from there, I found out that there was this Orange County Q Tech Fest that happened in January. And so I went to that. And now there's like 300 people. Can you believe it? 300 people that think the same way. And they mentioned the Q conference in Palm Springs. And a couple of years later, I made it to that. And it was, at this time, it was 5,000 and 6,000 attendees. And I had found my people, right? These are educational geeks like myself. And when you, especially in education, but I think it's true in many professions, you might get isolated. You might get caught into a silo of thinking that no one understands what I do on a day-to-day basis. No one could commiserate. No one could understand the challenges I face. And when you're surrounded by dozens or hundreds or thousands of people that are in that tribe, that are in that group, it's a huge opportunity, and it's very rewarding. And the weird thing is that some argue that social media could be a detriment to it, or could replace conferences, or it could replace future, face-to-face conversations. And I find that it enhances it. I can't tell you, and I know you've experienced this, Rushton, how many times I've either been in a conversation or I've witnessed a conversation where someone's walked up and said, "Wait, are you Rushton? Are you Rushton H? We've met on Twitter. We've gone back and forth, and now I've met you in real life, IRL." And
True.
it's that it enhances, right? Because now I have this foundation of conversation that we've had on social media that I can then play into this real life person that I'm meeting for the first time in the hallway in Palm Springs at the conference. And so it has really enhanced. And then beyond that, now when we communicate in social media, we have this shared experience of a face-to-face experience to build upon. So they feed back into each other. And it's just hugely powerful when you can find that tribe and connect with them, not just face-to-face, but regularly year-round.
Cool. Let me bring Treasurer Allen in on this as well. I find that Allen has always got kind of a cool perspective on whatever we're talking about. And so with the bar set high, let me toss it his way.
Well, a couple of things that I was thinking about, and one of them is that this particular Rotary Club has a lot of education people in it. And so a lot of the people in our club will really key into this, and they'll be very interested in it, and they'll know what a lot of this jargon is that you've been using, and yet there are some of us out here in the world that are not quite so keyed into the educational process, the new advances in technology, and so forth and so on. And I will say that we feel somewhat left behind, cast aside. We don't quite know what to do with it, quite what to think of it, and I don't know whether I'm just rambling or what, but dumbing it down for us probably helps.
So jumping in on that, the idea that when that educators are ahead of the game seems to me to be kind of a somewhat more recent phenomenon. The idea that people who know more about technology, like that would be teachers, right? Like that's a really interesting shift that's going on over the last 10, 15 years. Because back in the day, it's like, oh well, if you can, you do, and if you can't, you teach, and that's said by people who don't know squat about teaching. That's for sure. But yeah, like this is a time when people who are looking to use all kinds of cool tools are finding ways to do it, very powerfully, and they're carrying a message about what's possible. You're seeing the same thing, Mike, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I certainly am, and apologies for any jargon I used. I recognize this is not a fully educational audience, so I purposely tried to nix any sort of acronyms and jargon from my talk, but so apologies if I missed it. I would agree with what you said, and I would also add the slight caveat that CUE is a special group of educators. It is a subset. We don't represent every educator in California and Nevada yet, but those that we do are those that are on the more cutting edge side of technology. That said, I think there are a lot of educators out there that are doing great things with technology that aren't members of CUE and don't come to our events. But there are a big population of educators that are still looking to learn and still looking to, hey, they put this thing on my desk, I know it does some things, I'm not sure, I'm a little afraid, and we continually seek those fellow educators out to bring them alongside and do what you're saying, slow it down, talk to them carefully about it. And what I find is the best course of action when working with an educator who's what we would say tech hesitant, right? Tech hesitant, is to connect it with their passion. And it goes all the way back to the beginning here. And I'll tell just a brief story here that we had a program at my old high school when every teacher was given a computer. We had funding, it came from the state, and we had to put a computer in every classroom. It was for the students and the teacher to use together. And I had some strongly resistant teachers. Look, I don't need it, give it to somebody that's going to use it, I'm never going to use it. And the statement of the grant was I couldn't couldn't accept that. I had to put it in their classroom, and I had to train them, and I had to provide them resources to learn. And so this one particular teacher had no interest in using it, had no previous experience with technology, and I found out that he was an avid bird watcher. And so I sat down with him, and I fired up the browser, and I did a quick search for bird watching. I know nothing about bird watching, but I did a quick search for bird watching, and I found up 2 or 3 websites, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I subscribe to that magazine. Oh yeah, I know that show." And so I clicked on him, and sure enough, I clicked on a few of these things until he pushed me sort of out of the way very gently, took over the mouse, and started clicking around. And I had gotten him quite deliberately to take over and start looking at the computer. This had nothing to do with his subject matter. He was a driver's ed and health teacher, right? But I got him hooked on something he was passionate about. And I would stop by every week or so and say, "Hey, how's it going, Doug? How's that look? And oh, have you gone to that other bird site?" And if I found something, I would send him a link. "Hey, here's another bird watching site." And I just kept feeding him these resources with something he was passionate at. And he wasn't very good at the mouse and couldn't type very well, but because he wanted to learn more, he asked me, "Hey, can you help me? I'm trying to figure this thing out, and I want to subscribe to this magazine, and I see they've got this email that I can sign up for." And I showed him that, and then I showed him a game. It was called Minesweeper, and it taught him how to use the mouse, and sure enough, after a while, his mousing skills got better. And then fast forward, 6 months later, I walked by, and I checked in on him, and he had a lesson up on the computer with the kids, and he was using it with the kids. It took him a certain route that was linked to his passions, and I had to be patient enough and not force feed him. "No, you will use this. You will build a PowerPoint slideshow." I had to be patient and go that route with this particular teacher. And so your call for slowing down and listening is hugely relevant, and it's a lot of the work that we do at Q.
I think a lot of the same things are happening in the Rotary community. People think, oh, well, Rotary and that technology, but there's so many possibilities that arise. And as we begin to look at kind of what we can do, we had a group from our club just yesterday morning. We met online with a young entrepreneur in Poland and did some mentoring. So we had a group of people who knew about business law and marketing to this group and blah 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 blah. And we had just kind of made it possible for someone who's got a startup going to be able to connect and get ideas. And I think once Rotarians start saying, "Oh, you mean we could kind of connect with people in our community who are trying to do good things for the community and connect them with what you guys are doing and what this group is doing," and the connections are what make the community, obviously, and part of the fun of it. Alan, anything else before we wind things down?
Well, is there a certain level of teachers that belong to Q, that work with Q? Is it upper level, lower level, full spectrum?
It's a full spectrum. We serve K through 20, so that means we've got kindergarten and pre-kindergarten teachers all the way up through high school professors. In terms of demographics, the largest chunk of our members represent K through 6 education. I think Rushton could probably agree with this as well, but I found as a high school teacher, I was more attuned to my subject area. And when I looked at opportunities for professional development, I would look first to, where could I go hang out with another bunch of English teachers, and where could I learn about writing and language and grammar. And so I joined professional associations that were specific to my subject area. It wasn't until later that I came across Q, which is all subject areas. So the biggest chunk is K6, and the next biggest is middle school and then high school, and then the smallest chunk are the schools of ed, the professors that teach teachers. So if that helps answer your question. But you're going to find, and this is another one of my favorite quotes, William Gibson, the sci-fi author, he's famously quoted as saying, "The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed." So, everything I just said doesn't mean that you're not going to find some out-of-this-world amazing technology teacher that's a physics teacher at the senior level. Right, or the top-notch high school professor or college professor that's using technology. There's going to be amazing innovation in all levels, and that pre-kindergarten teacher that's using technology day in and day out. So it does cut across all levels.
Perfect. Well, with that, let's thank Mike for taking this time to talk to us. Lots of cool possibilities coming up and cool thoughts with that.
Thank you.
And Mike, I'm going to hand it back over to you for kind of a final thought in just a second. So I need to kind of wind down the usual way, and then if you've got a piece of profundity to share, then it'll be your moment.
I shared all my profundity. I shot it all out. I got nothing left.
I got nothing. I got nothing. So anyway, you're going to have to draw up on some of that nothing in just a minute because I'm going to hand it back to you anyway. Members and guests, thank you very much for taking in the program and the meeting this week. Guests, we have two particular requests of you. One is that you fill out the survey. You let us know you're here. It's important to us to know, who it is that's kind of coming in. We want to send a thank you, come and join us anytime. We won't spam you or anything like that. And then a little farther down, there's the discuss section, DISQUS. You can create an account or sign in using Facebook or Google or whatever you like. And tell us what you thought. We believe strongly that the impressions of people who might be quite new to our club will carry thoughts that will allow us to improve. In the same way that technology is mostly a function of being able to ask a good question rather than knowing, how to do this, that, or the other. We think that whatever it is your experience is with online Rotary, we think that if you will just share those thoughts with us, we'll be able to kind of work with those ideas and make what we're doing yet better. So with that, I will look for a little profundity from Mike to finish us off. Get us going.
Okay. All right. You challenged me. So here's my best effort at profundity. I'm going to try and get the glare right here. But this is a poster I downloaded and I printed and I gave away hundreds of these at the Q conference. It's a set of 14. It's one of a set of 14. And I don't know if you could see it, but it says Titan here. And what this is this was made at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory through funding provided by NASA. And it's free to the public. You can download your own if you want to Google it. And it says Titan because that's one of the moons of Saturn, and you'll recognize that there's liquid on Saturn and there's boats here. And what this is a travel poster presuming the future in which we're exploring all the planets in our solar system and beyond, the exoplanets that we've been discovering. And so this reminds me of the quote that whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. And if you think you can explore the other planets in the solar system, then I think you're right. And I think we have a great future ahead of us. And so this was a perfect poster to pass out to students at the Student Powered Showcase at this most recent Q conference because it really set forward that expectation that we will eventually expand beyond Earth and colonize other planets. And I loved that optimism. So that's why there you go. That's my profundity.
Hashtag profundity nailed. Well done, sir.
Sound effects.
Well, members and guests, thank you again. We look forward to seeing you next week when we talk to some other fascinatingly cool person about the possibilities of innovation, education, and entrepreneurship as they relate to service.